Hello, my name is Benjamin Hart. I'm an American attorney and the managing director of Integrity Legal here in Bangkok, Thailand. As the title of this video suggests, we're discussing, well, the definition of insanity. And I've heard it said that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. And I think that that kind of sums up where we're kind of at here in Thailand at the moment, especially with respect to these ongoing tightening of restrictions. Some call it a lockdown, others don't, but this sort of just constant ratcheting up of restrictions, especially here in Bangkok and other provinces surrounding Bangkok or thereabouts, as well as down south. And just basically the purpose of this video, obviously it's kind of an opinion piece. A lot of people have asked me, sort of in the context of some of these videos I've done, whether or not I'm like trying to be provocative. No, that's actually not my intention at all. If anything, I am far from that. I make these videos because or they've asked me if I'm trying to be contrarian. Again, that's not actually really my purpose at all. I would prefer everyone was on the same page. It's just that page was a little bit more reasonable page. My purpose actually in this is I'm probably the least contrarian, if you want to call Farang or person of foreign origin in Thailand, insofar as I was perfectly content with everything as of Q1 2020. I was frankly not unhappy up until about April of 2021 in a personal sense. And even now, I wouldn't necessarily say I'm particularly, again, looking to be contrarian. It's more that it just seems like people are getting into a very rigid mindset. They've got sort of blinders on, at least at a policy level in certain instances. And there seems to be a lot of, for lack of a better term, doubling down on things that, in my opinion, I think we need to really seriously reassess at this point, especially what are we going into? 17 months on? 16 months on of being under these lockdown measures, this emergency decree regarding COVID-19, and, really a reassessment of, we've discussed this further in other videos, should we be looking at this from a containment standpoint? Should we continue to be repeating the same courses of action when thus far it doesn't seem like it's particularly worked? So just as a for example, let me go ahead and quote from the Bangkok Post. It's bangkokpost.com. Article is titled, 13 provinces to be under curfew, lockdown until August 2nd. Quoting directly, the government is to extend the existing curfew and other tight restrictions in Greater Bangkok and 4 southern border provinces to at least August 2nd and add 3 more provinces to the list on Tuesday. The curfew from 9 p.m. to 4 a.m. and other restrictions have been enforced since last Monday. I want to get back to that. Just keep that in mind, last Monday. In Bangkok, Nonthaburi, Samut Prakan, Samut Sakhon, Pathum Thani, and Nakhon Pathom, as well as the southernmost provinces of Narathiwat, Patani, Songkhla, and Yala. Quoting further, the restrictions include the closure of all stores and shopping malls at 8 p.m. except for retailers deemed essential, such as supermarkets, chemists, and those selling medical and communications equipment. A ban on dine-in eateries continues, I'll get back to that in a minute, while restaurants, wet markets, and convenience stores must close from 8 p.m. to 4 a.m. No public transport is available from 9 p.m. to 4 a.m. The reason last Monday, so, a week ago approximately, we were already dealing with these ratcheted up lockdowns. And the reason I think that that's notable is cases have gone up. As the ratcheting down of folks' ability to do their business and get on with their lives, as all these restrictions are put in place, where is the benefit? That to me is the fundamental issue at play here. We've now done this, what would one say? At least for here in Bangkok, we've gone through, 4 iterations at this point of this whole thing? So it started off back over a year ago, April, May, June, we went into a very hard lockdown where just everything basically just closed up. And, I at the time, and I think others, felt that, okay, we don't know what this is. It's an unforeseen threat. Let's go ahead, take some pretty stringent precautions. And I think reasonable people could say that that was a good idea, not knowing what the situation was. Then again, we had to deal with this back in December. That started at the end of December, going through February and going through January and February, depending on where you were. But if you were in Bangkok, it basically went into March. Then things sort of opened back up for a few weeks. And then, at Songkran, in the middle of April, things clamped back down. And to say that we haven't been under anything other than what you would call a lockdown, I think is pretty disingenuous from Songkran until now. Now, the degree of lockdown that it's been in Bangkok, one could there were sort of shades of gray. There were varying degrees of lockdown during that time period. But yeah, we've been under a lockdown here in Bangkok basically that entire time. And what's it accomplished? I mean, that to me, I'm not a medical doctor at this point. I'm not claiming I have, but we have talked about in other videos on this channel. There is now literature, peer-reviewed and otherwise, in the West that's coming out of places that went under these harsh lockdowns that are seriously questioning whether or not they had maybe a negative impact in certain instances. But one major theme that seems to be quite pervasive is that maybe it does nothing at all. It doesn't really have a major impact on overall cases. And that, to me, two things that are different from last summer to now. One is we now have some data, and I think there's a lot of data out there to suggest at best lockdowns don't really have any fundamentally beneficial impact in terms of dropping case numbers in and of themselves. I think there's serious cause to question that, or I think that's a very good question. The other thing is we actually do know how deadly this is as a percentage, in terms of case fatality rates. That's proven people to have had it. And this is not in the number, this is not MERS, for example, which my understanding killed 15 to 30% of people that got it. Well, that's terrible, and at the same time, it's something to be concerned about, but it does not have, the fatality rates that we were scared about a year ago. Now that we sort of know where this thing's at, yes, it's very sad to see, but when you sort of take a bird's eye view of all of this and look at the overall numbers, I'm not going to get into all of that. That's not the purpose of this video. But when doing a cost-benefit analysis, the benefit we were trying to get out of this is that the case numbers go down. Well, we've been through a number of these lockdowns already, and as time has progressed, it just keeps going up. Meanwhile, what's it costing? It's costing the economy virtually everything. The economy is in a bad way, to say the least. I mean, I just see it out there, and it really breaks my heart. The purpose of this video, again, when you continue to do the same thing over and over again and expect a different result, I don't know what result is expected at this point. And as I said a moment ago, we've already ratcheted down for a week here in Bangkok, and the numbers are still going up. And I don't know when and where that ends. Like, at what point do we say, well, we need to maybe rethink this? As we've discussed in other videos, Singapore has come out and said, their health ministry has said we need to maybe treat this as an endemic disease. As we've talked about in other videos, maybe stop looking at it from the standpoint of containment, because the containment phase is long past. Yeah, mitigation is certainly important. Isolate those who are most vulnerable to this. Hopefully get folks who are most vulnerable to this inoculated as soon as possible so that we can get past it. But again, I'm not trying to be provocative or contrarian in these videos. In fact, quite the opposite. I'm hoping things go back to the status quo anti-COVID sooner rather than later. We can all get on with our lives. But I just think maybe looking at the possibility that we just have to live with this thing and live with it as best we can, sort of keep calm and carry on, if you will, I think it may be a good idea for us to look at that kind of scenario at this point in time.